Welcome back, Pirate Crew. It's your captain, Yeehaw Yadam, and I'm still joined by guest star Fernando Freeman Fuentes as we're going to go over green today on our road to the Treasure Cup. And boy, oh boy, does this list look insane. I think when Fernando showed me this list, I was like, yeah, that just is a list of cards that are terrifying. So Fernando, let's go over this list, man. Why are we not all playing green? Because this looks amazing to me.
I mean, literally, we were discussing the deck before like starting the video, and we were like, "What does green lose to?" And we just blanked.
I
So I don't
actually
know.
cannot fathom. That's the crazy part. Like before we even get to the deck profile, and we're gonna try to explain how to play green, explain the nuances of green, and like what we should be looking for in the mulligan. But besides that, like this deck really has almost an answer to everything. There are very key cards that like we just can't play around, aka Jet Pistol. That's just a card that exists in the universe that everyone has to deal with. So I don't want the answer of this deck just loses to Pistol, because we all lose to Pistol. No, but there are definitely some really really good cards, and it feels like this deck has a good matchup versus red, versus green. Purple might be a little bit harder, but it's definitely like how you play it. And
Just do
certainly it
like
has a good matchup, I mean, versus itself, but that's more of a skill intensive matchup. And the matchup between the mirror as well as law is very, very similar. So without that, Fernando, let's get to the deck profile, man.
yeah. So this is Eustace Captain Kidd as the leader for the green deck. The reason he's so threatening is because he provides a lot of board control. Every time that you have three Dawn open, you can almost essentially threaten, even though you won't do it all the time, that you can attack a tapped character multiple times. And when you do, that kind of guarantees that the game goes into the later portion of the game, where green really thrives because it has such a powerful top end and diversified top end. So that's the leader. That's what he does. And then the green cards are actually also really really powerful. So it's like a nice myriad between you don't sacrifice anything from your leader and your cards. We'll just go over them really quickly. So we play a nice sweep of one drops, two drops, and three drops across the board, and Yadam can tell you more about them.
Okay, sure. So, one thing that I saw, that, I mean, I heard that Fernando was saying was specifically the fact that green's cards are very powerful, right? So, to counterbalance the very powerful nature of the green cards, they're all almost always when attacking effects, right?
Mhm.
I can't think of a single card that is just kind of like an on play besides the Nekomamushi and the Izo. So they kind of have to give you like this. They give you the power on the back end of the card, right? So you pay it up front, and then when you cash it in, they get that double dip, and the value that they get on that double dip is very, very good. Besides that, they have two field spells. There are decks that don't even have one. They have Momonosuke and they have Bonnie. Blue struggling here with just a Perona. It's unbelievable. I mean, Red has Nami, but it's arguably just not as good as Bonnie and Momo if you can defend your Bonnie and Momo behind a Eustace. So it becomes almost unbelievably why this deck has two of them. I don't think Purple has one, Red doesn't have one. It's just green. So and obviously law. Anyone that has access to green will play these cards, but they're just very, very good. And so some of the reasons why this deck is so highly consistent. Not only that, we have the one draw blocker in terms of Beji, but we all kind of have that except purple. And then we have cards like Nekomamushi and Izo. These cards are Wano Country cards and kind of the most defining reasonings on why we play Momo. Not only will Momo allow you to outgrind the mirror because you will have more value, you'll be able to add more cards to your hand, which will allow you to defend your board easier. You get access to Neko and Izo, which let you deal with their board, which is kind of what green wants to do without giving you an excessive card draw in terms of your life. Eventually, if I'm just dealing with your board and not hitting your life, you'll get to board states where you'll have 1 to 2 cards in hand. And once you have 1 to 2 cards in hand, you can no longer defend your board. And I can now effectively kill you over the course of a couple turns. And guess who does that really, really well? A leader that says attack twice. It's unbelievable. Not only that, but you also have access to Yamato, who is a crit card and a double strike, which in decks where I can take your hand out, if Yamato only connects once, you effectively lost the game. So there is just almost no downside to green, except maybe overcommitting to the board and getting high rolled XD. I really don't know what to say. But just to go over the list, we do have 4 Momo, 4 Beji, for Bonnie. amazing. We have 4 Nico and 4 Izos just to compensate. And we have Oppo. Why is Oppo here? It is a searchable 2K. You might argue that Beppo is also playable in some amounts, but Beppo is not a searchable card. Often we'll get bottom decked by one of our 2 searchers, and then we just really are bottom decking cards, and we have to kind of hard draw the Beppos. So we've opted not to play the Beppos. Then we're talking about 4 Rhizos. Oh my god, tell me about Rhizo and how good it is. It's crazy, crazy.
Yeah, so definitely Raizo lets you make your game plan a little less linear. What you can do with Raizo, actually, you can either put a Dawn on him and attack while drawing a card, or you can choose not to do that and let your opponent have their life still intact while also still drawing. What that lets you do in combination with Yamato is you can actually go into this like starve your opponent game plan where you gain all the card advantage before you deal with their life, and you can use the banish on Yamato to actually surgically take life away when you want to. Effectively, what that leads to is you have all the card advantage and they don't, and that's kind of like the Green's control plan. But you can also just go aggressive with it and play Raizo off of Trafalgar Law, and then start drawing extra cards while being aggressive at the same time.
Yeah, just imagine a scenario where they go Ezo, clear your card, and then Ezo on the following turn, you might put, a couple Dawn under it, clear something that was attacking, and then you just Trafalgar the Ezo back, and now you've played a Rhizo, and it's just like, oh my god. That is so good. So Trafalgar Law, man, I still cannot pronounce his name.
You did pretty good there.
Okay, cool, awesome. So yeah, that card is very, very good, and in combination with obviously our fantastic 5-drop lineup of Yamato, as you were saying, surgically ends the game, puts them at life totals that are very easy to deal with. Again, I think that you want to get your opponent to like 3-2 life, and at 3-2 life, Green can close out the game very, very easy with their very powerful cards. Then we have Okiku. Okiku is, wow, another amazing Wano card, like just again unbalanced. The reason that, and this is something I do like Odin myself, the reason I think Odin is a very good card is not only because of his hero power, but the fact you get to play Kinemon, and Kinemon's only good because you get to play Okiku. And even looking into the further set and the following set, when you get to play that 8-drop Odin, why is 8-drop Odin good? Is because on KO it summons Okiku. It's all based around Okiku. That card is very, very good, and we have a bunch of activators in terms of our straw swords that let her not only rest one character, we can rest one, swing into the one we rest, and then use her to rest another one to trigger our hero or our Hawkins. And then that's when things start going a little out of hand. If we hit the curve of Beji, Okiku, Hawkins, prepare yourself, because
It's good times, yeah.
prepare yourself, because you better have a pistol or you're about to lose the game, man. It is very, very strong. And then we already spoke about Yamato. Law is an amazing card. Hawkins, I literally have nightmares of that card. You can ask Fernando. I think at the beginning, the only differences we made in this list were like he started off with 2 Hawkins, and I'm like, bro, Hawkins, that card is just, it's just too crazy, man. Help me.
A few stories about Hawkins. We ended up adding Hawkins mostly because Straw Sword, so they have a pretty amazing interaction, especially in the mirror match and against Law. And I think those 2 cards really go the distance in those matchups.
Certainly. And then we kind of went a little bit lower to the ground off of our top end. It's just 2 of the 8-drop and 2 of the 7-drop. I mean, these cards are very, very good. By all means, the 7-drop is almost game winning versus certain matchups. Versus purple, that they have to 10-drop Kaido the 7-drop, because this card just every turn just pressure, and they have no form of interaction with it. They can't really do anything except 10-drop to it.
The main reason we went a little lighter on the top end too, and it's really important to understand, is I think that just the prevalence of Jet Pistol really causes you to not want to play too hard into it, because if you use too much of your Dawn to play either of the Eustaces and they just get Otama Pistol, so really that's one of the main ways to lose a winning game, is to fall into that. So
correct, falling into those traps. And then not only that, but I might as well mention it here, because I guess we'll mention it further. But the blue matchup is something that is very, very easy in my opinion. Playing green into blue, in my opinion, is very, very easy, because the fact that I don't know how else to say it, because the fact that blue has such low attack power thresholds that they need to use so much Dawn to deal with your big cards that they can't effectively do it. The only card that they can efficiently deal with is your 7-drop. The reason that green wasn't one of the best decks in the limited battle series is because Flamingo was an easy out to the 7-drop. And once you play 7 and then they out it immediately for more cost while gaining tempo, is a losing position. So the only matchup where I think the 7-drop really just gets overshined is the blue matchup. So you never fall into the trap of committing to the 7-drop, even if they flamingo you, even after they Mihawk, because if they have something to counter it on the crackback, it's going to feel really, really bad. And that's the only card that it feels bad on. So you might as well pitch it for your leader's ability at that point in time. Other than that, that card is amazing in many matchups. And like I said, we don't really need the top end to outvalue anyone. We don't need to fall into these traps of Otama Pistol or a combination of Mihawk and Flamingo. Then we played 3 of Punk Gibson. That card's oh my god. Yeah, take it away. Take it away.
No, so the main reason why I feel like Pump Gibson deserves a highlight is because I've seen even in like the higher echelons of skill level, people just shaving copies of Pump Gibson and not playing Pump Gibson at all in their decks. And I just feel if a deck has access to a plus 4K pump, it almost certainly needs to play it. And Pump Gibson's trigger in life is also super key to winning an almost unlosable game. If you hit a Pump Gibson in your life, you can all of a sudden.
It's backbreaking. It's really backbreaking. For those of you who don't know, the trigger of Punk Gibson in life is rest an opponent's character. Doesn't have to have a cost. Doesn't matter. It just rests the character. So it basically negates an attack, and then again, it facilitates your leader as well as your characters to deal with it on the crackback in much easier way. It facilitates your Basil Hawkins. It rests blockers, and then you can go for game. That card wins games out of nowhere. And the fact that we're playing it at 3, the reason we don't play it at 4 is because it just couldn't fit the slot in. But that card, it's just at the right time. If that triggers, that will literally just win you the game. And in the mirror match, that card will just win you the game, right? If you just rest the character that they can no longer unrest, and then you have access to it, if you can rest their Hawkins, ooh-wee, we're going in. That's game. You better defend that with your life. Or you're going to lose. And then 2 of the Straw Sword, again, to make the mirror match as well as Law a little bit easier. So why haven't many green players found success? And I feel like many green players haven't found success because they have fallen into the trap or the fallacies, I guess the sins of playing green. So let me go ahead and highlight a couple cards here. And let's go ahead and talk about those things, Fernando. So I have here Momo and Bonnie. Take it away.
Yeah, so definitely what separates a good law player from a great law player is the utilization of their 1-drops. So what I mean by that is whenever you have the opportunity to use one of your 1-drops, tap it and have it survive the turn cycle and come back to you and it's still being on board, then it can continue to accrue resources for you. That's kind of what you want to play for. In the same way that red decks try to get 3, 4, 5 attackers in play at the same time and then attack you with everything they have, you want to also be able to put 3 or 4 cards sideways in terms of Mononosuke Bonnie and then actual attackers like Okiku. Do all of it in one turn so that the opponent can't deal with everything at the same time and you can double dip, like Yadon says, on certain value cards.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the usage of those cards while they're under the protection of the 8-drop kid is basically the best time to use them because at that point you're drawing 2, 3, 4 cards a turn to your opponent's 1 card. So that's how you win those games.
And I'm about to say something a little bit controversial. Something maybe people might not know, but oftentimes hitting a green player for life is very, very dangerous, right? Those early chip damages that you give green and they just freely take, it ends up biting you in the butt because eventually they'll have such a large hand while they're also playing to clear your board, right? They're not planning to hit you in the face anytime soon unless you're purple. They kind of gotta. But if you're any other color, they're just dealing with your board. So you're getting run out of resources. You're pitching cards to defend your board. You're not double drawing because of your life. And eventually you'll run out of cards in hand. And then you'll be in scenarios where they drop the A-drop. You have 2 to 3 cards in hand, 1 card on board, and they have like 8+ cards in hand with a Dawn up. And then those scenarios, it's just over. You cannot effectively deal with the Dawn that required to deal with that A-drop unless you have Otama Jet Pistol or the 10-drop Kaido. Like those are the only decks that can really get the get out of jail free card. If you're playing the mirror, be very cognizant of what you're doing and when you're playing their cards. Oftentimes playing a little bit more defensive, relaxed and not hitting them in the face. I know it sounds crazy because your hero can every turn sideways, that's almost always a trap in the mirror match and will effectively net you losses more than it'll let you gains. Next time you try to play the green mirror or play any sort of matchup versus green, try to show some restraint and see how that works out. But that's something I also wanted to highlight. Besides that, we have Nekomamushi and Izu. Nekomamushi and Izu are some of the key cards that we want to mulligan for in almost every matchup versus these character-centric decks, as Fernando has put it over the course of this week. Red is character-centric, blue is character-centric, Law is character-centric. The only deck that really, I mean, and green is also character-centric. So the only deck that really isn't is purple. They really just do not care. They will just summon big boys that we can interact with. Their Izos and our Nikos are very dead in that matchup. But we have other ways of facilitating those matchups. So those are cards that we want to mulligan for. And then Okiku Hawkins is also like
Exodia.
it's actually just Exodia versus many decks. Again, the only decks that can really fathom to like play out of green, that's why we think purple is in such a good position, is because green is so good. Green is so good that it makes it essentially hypes purple up, because purple now has a good matchup versus what we were to believe this almost unbeatable a deck. But basically what we wanted to say in this portion is like try different things. There are a couple things that you can mistake if you're a newer green player, and if you make those mistakes, it seems trivial that you want to immediately play Bonnie and tap Bonnie to get that value like Nami, but if you do that without being able to defend it, you will lose out on potential gains, which is something that's a little bit weirder on that side of the spectrum. But other than that, I don't really think there's much more than we can say about green. If we want to run down the matchups, let's talk about red. How do we beat red, Fernando, as green?
Yeah, definitely. Red is, it might be a little controversial, but I think one of your single best matchups. The reason for that is because on the play, you can go any of your one drops, particularly Capone, and then just curve out into an Okiku, and she will take over the game by herself if they can't answer it in some jet pistol kind of way. If they jet pistol that, then they're not hitting the 8-drop, so there's a lot of permutations that go into that. On the draw, you can go for a little bit of a more board control, like value centric game plan, like I mentioned earlier in the video, where you just try to take control of the game with Raizo and Yamato. They don't have a lot of defensive power typically, so Yamato can really take over the game, and then just rely on your late game. If you've forced out a few jet pistols, maybe you use the sticks, and then from there you can always win the game that way. So those
I
are
think
the keys in that match.
I think the only thing I want to also highlight in that specific matchup is play around the Red Hawk. I mean, if after we've shown this video or the video series, I do expect people to be on Red Hawk, and definitely think about Red Hawk before you make your turns, right? If you have a Bonnie on board, if you have a Beji, or you want to play a Beji, make sure you do it at the end after your attacks. Sequence correctly. If you have a Bonnie that's already on the board, try to use Bonnie's effect. Maybe add her to hand off of a Law if you can, and then swing and then play her back down to play around the potential Red Hawks. And once you can play around those Red Hawks and not have your cards die to it, ooh-wee, man. They don't get that secondary value, which is what they need. They need to use that Red Hawk in order to defeat Momo, Bonnie, and Beji. And if you can stop them from doing that, then you're in a very commanding position. Versus blue, what do you think about blue?
Yeah, for sure. So when it comes to the blue matchup in particular, never use, like you alluded to before, never use your 7-drop. Always rely on the 8-drop in that matchup, because 7 is so easy to bounce or get rid of, but 8 is not. Try to use Basil Hawkins is the key card in the matchup. Use Basil Hawkins with Straw Sword in combination to double dip on value. Blue does not have that easy of a time if it has 0 Dawn active during your own turn to try to defend itself, because they run a lower count of 2Ks. So be cognizant of that. Try to, play around hitting them for, 7, 6, and certain times where they've used 2Ks already. And then be aware of Love Beam. But for the most part, those are the keys to the matchup. Just be aware of when you can take your attacks.
Exactly. You have to be very aware of the board states, the ebb and flow of the game, if you will. If they're tapped out, like you said, they just don't run many 2Ks. Mihawk and maybe some amount of Alvidas is basically about it, right? But they only max out on Mihawk. They use their spells as a supplement to really defend their cards. And if they're tapped out, and they don't have the 7-drop Crocodile, then you can really punish them those turns. Make sure that you go on 2Ks for them, right? So if you're trying to defeat a 5K, put them on 7, and so on and so forth. They really have a tough time defending, and if they really need to defend it, they're gonna have to dump their whole hand, and then that's just too punishing. Once they have no hand, their Dawn gets tied up trying to defeat your A drop, and then that eventually you just outgrind them over the course of the game. Their Mihawk is certainly one of the cards that wins them the game, but again, like as Fernando said, if you use your Straw Sword with your Basil Hawkins, you just attach a bunch to Basil Hawkins. Sure, this is a turn passer, but their Mihawk is done, and then they can no longer take care of your 8-drop, right? Let's say you Straw Sword their Mihawk, you put 1 under the 8-drop, you go 9 at 9, they defend it, and you put 4 on Hawkins, and you're like, 10 restand. And then now they're like, oh boy. Boy. So you effectively, and you're still keeping up a ton of Dawn to either play blockers after that or use your Bonnies and so on and so forth. So you really have a lot that you can do in that blue matchup. That's why I think it's so negligible, because you just have such well-statted cards to their very poorly statted cards. And then your Yamato can easily clear up their life and then eventually put you in lethal range with your Eustace Captain Kidd. The mirror match, I think we've really been pinpointing it in the mirror match as well as Law. The key cards are, again, the suspension effects, Okiku, which is another pseudo suspension, Basil Hawkins, and the Straw Sword. You know, we need some amount of those cards and to really defeat the other green player. And then obviously in combination with Yamato, if Yamato ever connects into Law, ever connects into green, you're in a winning position.
Yeah, so I would say just to highlight Yamato a little bit more. So most of the time, I'll use this term a lot, delicate balance between attacking and not attacking in the green matchup, because eventually at some point you have to start giving your opponent a few resources, but you get to choose when to do that. The key with Yamato is that they either lose cards in their hand or lose cards from their life, and it kind of turns into this racing situation, and she helps out a lot
It's
in
a
games like
lose-lose.
this. So she's very crucial in the mirror match.
No, it's a lose-lose for your opponent completely, because not only they either have to lose hand or lose life, which is hand, right? So they're in that board state. So Hawkins will deal with the board, Yamato will deal with life, and we're chilling. And then for purple, our biggest thing is not overcommitting into the 10-drop, right? Even though Basil Hawkins is such a strong card, he doesn't really shine too much in the purple matchup. The 7-drop really becomes the keystone, and Yamato. And that's why he's there. That card is, again, an uninteractable piece of consistent damage against purple. The only way they can interact with it is the 10-drop itself. It acts as a defender versus their big boys, and Yamato is really the only one that can efficiently attack them for a lot of damage. You want to use your Rizos, your Jewelry Bonnies, and your Momos to get as much value as possible early, and then finish out the game with your strong leader ability and 7-drop and Yamatos. And I think that basically covers up green. No? What do you think?
Yeah, it's all good.
Any closing terms you want to add on, Fernando?
I would say, you know, if you're new to the card game, or in general, if you just want to try green for the first time, I would say that green lends itself to any skill level, and the more experience that you have with it, the better. But in general, if you want to give yourself an easier time and still have a very good chance to, you know, top 32, top 16, whatever your goals are in that sense, I think that green is a really good color to start off with if you want to give yourself the best possible chance. Not to say that it's a simple deck to play, and certainly the mirror matches are very difficult, but I think that someone who has limited time or limited experience should gravitate to a strategy like this, because it's very rewarding when you do have experience, but it also mitigates a little bit of that lack of experience. So I think I expect, at least for that reasoning, to see a lot of green going into the Treasure Cup. So.
Yeah, it's just a very powerful deck, in my opinion, and honestly, it rewards players who have put time into it, and even players that haven't put time into it. The cards are just so strong, and the build is so strong that eventually you might even just get carried just by how unbelievably unbalanced like 70% of your deck is. So yeah, that's basically our takes on green. That's why a lot of people have put this as one of the top contenders to beat, to win some of the Treasure Cups. I would be very surprised if not a very good majority of green players make it in there, but I'm also cognizant of the fact that if a lot of people are on the idea that green is the best deck, then therefore there are going to be a lot of people ready to counter it, that you definitely have put time into beating this matchup and learning this matchup, right? So you're going to, if you expect to play green, expect people to be very aware, and also expect to put some time to try to beat those matchups. But like we've done with every video, guys, if you've liked it, please leave a like down below. It helps us out a ton, and it helps us with the algorithm as well. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, leave a comment down below. And if I don't answer it, maybe Fernando will go ahead and answer any sort of comments. And as well, if you guys haven't joined the Pirate Crew just yet, please consider subscribing if you enjoy the content. And as always, guys, we'll see you on the next one. Peace.